Now, whether the atmosphere is stable or unstable is important to us because it tells us what kind of clouds we're going to have and what kind of general weather conditions. How do you determine the stability of the atmosphere? What you do is you measure the actual lapse rate, which is the decrease of temperature with altitude, against the standard lapse rate. If the temperature gets colder much more quickly than standard, you have an unstable air condition, and the weather that goes with it we're going to talk about. If the air actually gets warmer with altitude instead of colder, or if it gets cold much more slowly than normal, in that case you've got a stable atmosphere, and we're going to talk about that kind of weather. Let's assume that you've got moist, stable air that is moving upslope. What kind of clouds are you going to get? If you've got stable air that's moving up a slope, stable air resists rising. And when clouds form, when the air gets to the top of the mountain, it's basically going to level off and stay at that altitude. And the type of clouds that you're going to get are basically going to be stratus-type clouds. You get stratiform clouds, and if you've got any precipitation, it will tend to be steady precipitation, and the air generally will be smooth with very little turbulence in it. But let's assume that you're flying, for instance, in a desert. Let's assume that you're flying in the desert and the air is being warmed from below, and it sure gets hot on the ground in the desert. That's going to decrease the stability of an air mass because it's going to create rising air. That rising air is going to develop thermals, rising columns of hot air in the atmosphere. So the development of thermals depends on solar heating. And that air, as it's heated from below with solar heating or however else it's heated from below, will become unstable air. Now, what kind of weather do you get in unstable air? Well, you tend to get turbulence, but you do tend to get relatively good surface visibilities because that rising air kind of carries away the pollution and haze and so on in the lower atmosphere, cleans it out for good visibility. If you get clouds forming in a moist, unstable air mass, the type of clouds that you'll get will be cumuliform, cumulus-type clouds, and a showery type of precipitation. Now, let's assume that an unstable air mass is forced up some kind of slope. If an unstable air mass is forced upward, that air is going to want to keep on rising. Unstable air tends to want to keep on rising, and what it's going to produce is clouds with a lot of vertical development and a lot of cumulus along with it. Now, towering cumulus clouds like this, towering cumulus clouds are going to indicate convective turbulence. Convection is rising air, and the ultimate in rising air is big towering cumulus, which may eventually grow into thunderstorm clouds.